Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 New Jersey International Film Festival Q&A session. Today we have two wonderful animation artists, as well as one of the festival jurors on hand, and we're going to be talking about their movies, and hope you guys can come and check them out. They're actually playing on two different days, but I'd like to let you know that the 28th annual, yes, 28th annual. I founded this festival back in 1996. We got a challenge grant from the state of New Jersey to put on this festival, which was our first call for entries festival. And we've been getting wonderful films from around the world for over 28 years. And this year's festival will be taking place on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays between June 2nd and June 11th. There'll be a host of films. Most of them will be available in person, and there will also be some online exclusive shows, but all of the programs are available online. We're a hybrid festival. We've been that way since COVID, and we've maintained the kind of hybrid model for the last, I'd say 2 years, to make sure that our online audience stays with us. And today we have Shon, who's the director of the animated film Meet Cute, and we have Idan Gilboa. He is from Israel, and his film is called Deadline. And Vanessa Tirok, she's the editor-in-chief of the Rutgers Review. She was also part of our programming committee. And welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
That pregnant pause, I love it. I love it. Anyway, your two films are very different from each other. And Shon, I'll ask you first. Your film is called Meet Cute. Can you give us like a brief synopsis of the film?
The film itself is about two people at a bus stop, and they meet for the first time and fall in love. It's a very simple story. It's a very positive story. This is my 14th short film, and I never done romance before. So I was really interested in sort of exploring that. And when I think about that, I always, for some reason, had a really, really strong vision of the 1920s Buster Keaton type of films, where there was just a charm and a loveliness. And I thought, oh, that'd be really quite nice. So that was sort of the idea. And I was in a meeting one day, and I just sort of came, the idea hit me. I drew up a little bit of the characters, and then that was the start. And I finished it just last year and sent it out, and it's been pretty good. But one thing I'll say is that I try to be very positive in all of my work. It's one of the things that really and simple too. I do all the films myself. I do all the work myself. I don't do it for any media, or don't do it for, it's just a pure love of animation. So I just, it's a little personal, I shouldn't say personal story, but it's a reflection of what I would view as love and how to meet someone in a nice, kind, and charming way.
That's wonderful. And Idan, your film is the kind of polar opposite, although we must say there are loving moments within the film as well. Tell us the genesis of your film Deadline.
The genesis of my film. Well, basically, it's about my letting my alter ego get loose. The idea of Deadline was another word. It started like 4 or 5 years ago in a pitch, in draft sketch. It basically, I'm sorry about my English. It's a little bit.
That's okay. I mean, your film focuses on an old lady, and she's making her way to the doctor's office, but we see the Grim Reaper, this kind of devilish figure who's going to be claiming the souls of people whose time has come. But somehow the old lady finds a way to avoid being taken. Is that a good way to describe your film?
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of it explores the power balance between bureaucracy, death, and the feline devotion of the elderly, as I describe it. And at its center is a brave story between two senior ladies that sickened by society's disregard and disrespect.
And, you know, I'm a huge cat lover, so there's all these wonderful scenes with a cat in it, but we won't tell the audience too much about that so that we don't give it away.
Yeah,
Vanessa,
I'm a cat lover as well.
yeah. I've been doing humane work. I think I've saved 200 cats over the last 2 decades. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Vanessa, I'm sorry, Idan, you had something to add?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add you know, when I was young, my mother used to raise purebred Siamese cats. So we always had a little of like 14 or so, always running around the house. We had kittens everywhere. It was just a constant cycle. So I'm a huge cat fan myself.
Siamese cats are real talkers. So
yeah,
yes, they're wonderful too. All
I
right,
myself have a Sphinx cat.
What's that? Yeah,
I have a Sphinx cat.
Wow.
You know what? I'm not allowed to have one. I've always wanted, like I went to a cat cafe in Asia and they had Sphinx cats there, and they're just such an interesting textural feel. Like they're like a little gremlin.
They're very smart too. They're very intelligent, just like the Siamese.
Kind of a doggish style of behavior.
I don't think the cats would want you to compare them with dogs.
Yeah, not sure either.
Okay, Vanessa, please chime in.
Yeah, so I wanted to know, how did you get your start in animation? Like, what's your background and how did you get started in this field?
Shon, you first. Oh, okay. My story is a little bit long. I'll try to make it pretty quick. I started in 1990. I want to say 1995, 96, somewhere back, but almost 30 years now. So 27, 28, 29 years. And I was a snowboarder. I was a sponsored snowboarder in Canada. And I constantly got sort of injured during, you know, the big jumps and so on and so forth. So I thought, I need to do something else. And one thing that I've always loved was animation and cartoons, especially Calagwal, which is Jeremy the Singing Bear, which is an animation from England or from Europe, which you know, went through TV Ontario. And I was born and raised just watching stop motion. So when I watched the dance film, I was like, oh, I love stop motion so much. And I decided to start looking at, or I'll say this, I was in a film theater one day when I was like 14, 15, 16 years of age. And it was a really bad B movie. I think it was called Warlock or something. It was like a science fiction film. And at the very beginning, I think it was Lexus Cars had a commercial. And part of the commercial was a full showing of Pixar's Luxo Jr., which was the lamp and the ball. And at the time, I did some computer stuff at home. My parents bought me an Atari 400 XL, I think. And I was playing games and doing some plot graphics and stuff, but they were really pushing, you know, be computer literate. So I'm just like, okay, well, I'll you know, as a kid, you play around with it. And when I was sitting in the theater and looking at computer animation for the very first time, I realized that I can do this. You know, like this is something that I actually sort of, you know, I shan't say I understand, but I was inspired. And one thing that really inspired me was you know, as all young people, you know, the idea of being a filmmaker is a wonderful thing, but you have to work with others. You know, you have to pitch ideas, you have to, you know, get a group together, you have to get funding and all of that. And even though when I was sitting in the theater, I had this idea that I don't need to do any of that. I can just sit on a computer and actually just do animation and make content myself. So, and I knew that, you know, computers are really slow and you know, at the time, and the software didn't really exist or it was just in its infancy. So I thought I can grow and learn and develop as the software learns and develops. So for the last 30 years, that's pretty much what I did. I did a first short film. It took me about a year. I put that out. I got a lot of job offers from different studios. I decided to just work in jobs that will give me skills. So I wanted to learn how to model and texture and rig and animate and write stories and, you know, do sort of all of it. And that's what I did for years and years. I was lucky enough to get nominated for some awards for that. And then I started teaching. So started teaching at the Vancouver Film School, and then I started teaching at some other schools. And I've just been going back and forth. So I teach animation and I do animation all the way through. And again, as I said, Meet Cute's my 14th short film. And I plan to do hopefully one a year for the rest of my life. So, and hopefully I'll live a long time. So so that's sort of my history with 3D animation.
That's wonderful. What about you, Idan?
Well, actually, I started as my career as a graphic designer. I learned visual communication in the Bezalel Academy of Art and Design, Jerusalem. In my third year, I went to exchange student program in the School of Visual Arts, New York. There I first, for the first time, I took a stop motion class in the animation department. I had a very cool teacher named Voltaire. He's a stop motion, he's kind of crazy figure. I got very inspired by him. And I think at the moment I made these things move, all the puppets, and it felt like magic for me. And since then, I just fall in love with this kind of art form.
I mean, your two films are quite different. I mean, in many ways, Shon's is computer generated, where yours is kind of like King Kong, right? It's animating puppets, and both are painstaking. And I think I always, anybody who does animation must have a lot of patience. And, I'm just curious how long it took you guys to finish your films, even though Idan's film is longer, significantly longer than Shon's. I still get the sense that it must have taken a long time to render your film, Shon, and Idan, for you to be able to piece together your film too. Could you give us a ballpark of how long it took, like an idea of how long it took?
It's a little bit hard to track because I made it in a very hard times between lockdowns in Israel, and we had to build the set, but the lightman couldn't come because of the lockdowns. And then we had to stop everything for a month or two, and then we continued, but then the main animator couldn't come. So it took like more than 3 years, I think, eventually. But if it was condensed, I think that it's around one and a half year of production, and another half year of pre-production.
Right. That's right. What about you, Shon? How long did it take to make Meet Cute?
This one's a weird one for me because I started it years and years and years ago. I have about 4 or 5 other short films that I'm sort of in, sort of sections of making.
Juggling.
And I also, I teach a lot, I travel, I give, presentations, and I always get sidetracked. It's hard to sit down and actually spend time. My previous short films, I had the luxury of sitting down and just working straight through. So they normally take 4 to 6 months is how long a film generally takes me. The films that I'm kind of currently working on are a little bit more because they're longer as well. Meet Cute, I started again, years and years ago, but I did a little bit at the beginning, probably around 2 or 3 months of production on that. And then finally, again, COVID hit. Unfortunately, I was in, I was in China during the big lockdown that happened in March of last year. So I was sort of in my room for like 120 days, straight. And I was just like, okay, time to finish a short film.
Yeah.
So it was about 3 months on, about 6 months in total, maybe 8 months, off and on. The nice thing for me is that I every short film I do, I get quicker. The more you practice, the more you do. And I found that that's sort of happening now, and Pixar is one of the big studios that is really quite popular, and they had a thing years ago where they said, we can get faster computers every year or every 18 months, or the Moore's law. And they was like, well, how do we, all that time we save, do we make films quicker or do we make them better? And that's sort of what I sort of struggle with right now. I'm just like, well, 6 months of my life is a good focus. Anything more, then it's going to be a little bit more challenging to finish it, to keep that motivation and energy up. But at the same time, it's you want to put the time and effort into making something of quality, right? So, but yeah, and then the other thing is, in terms of rendering, you mentioned rendering.
Yeah.
I have all my other short films I've actually rendered locally at my, in my home. And I always had a little render farm of 2 or 3 computers off to the side. So if I finish something, I can send it to render, go to sleep, wake up, check,
Right, because it takes
go back
forever.
to sleep, but Meet is actually the first time I used online rendering services, which was fantastic, So I can just send, it's all 4K, it's multiple layers, it's a huge amount of data. So I had to kind of control that. And so as my work gets more sophisticated and my processes have to get more sophisticated as well. And it's always a wonderful journey. Every single project is something different and something challenging. So
Cool. Vanessa, time for one more question from you.
Were there any challenges that you faced when making your films?
Idan, you go first this time.
Well,
I guess he mentioned some of them.
yeah, everything about this film was a challenge, I think. The thing that we had to recruit all the team again and again and again every time after every lockdown, it was very hard. And the other challenge was that because it took so much time, I had to move all the studio because my contract with the studio was over. And then I had my first daughter was born.
Wow.
So,
Mazel tov.
Thank you. So it took me a lot of my free time. So yeah, too much challenges.
What about you, Shon?
Again, one of the nice things about just, as I said before, I do everything myself. It's on a computer. I have a chair. Every once in a while I have to get up to stretch my back and keep sort of healthy. Challenges wise, the only thing is that 3D animation is a little bit frustrating because the software is inconsistent. And if you're trying to do something different or new, or if you're trying to, go through the process, things generally fail. And especially if you're using new tools or new software or new methodology, there's, when you submit something and it comes back and it's all black, you're like, okay, and I want to move on to something else. I want, like you're constantly coming up against, the wall of technology, and it's just, pretty inconsistent. But again, if you just understand and accept that as part of the process, and just say, oh, what's this challenge? It didn't work out. Of course it didn't work out. Okay, next. So if you just kind of keep, and just, and I think that's actually had a pretty big impact on me myself, because as I said, my work is generally a very positive work in nature, and I'm a very positive person just because, I live in a constant, challenge. Like everything I want to do, I have to find a way to do it. So yeah, it's definitely not as challenging as Idan. So
Yeah, I think filmmaking is just, you have to have a thick skin, and perseverance is everything, for sure. Okay, folks, I wanted to just share screen right now so I can show you how to purchase tickets. So normally the way that it works, most folks know our website is njfilmfest.com. And njfilmfest.com is where everything used to be until COVID. Now, so this was the base, but now we kind of jigged it a little bit differently. So you would hit current events, which just bounces you back down. And this is my cat, Miss Amy. She passed away last year. So she gets her memorial call for entries because she will be the art of that festival, which is in the fall. But all you would need to do is click on buy tickets. But before I do that, this is the basic information: Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays between June 2nd and 11th. And tickets that are purchased are good for the on-demand as well as the in-person show date when available. And in-person tickets, or I should say general admission tickets, are $15. If you want to see everything, it's a great deal. It's like half price. We're showing 35 films that were selected out of 711. So you should be very, very proud that you were selected, because it's very exclusive territory. The films that we selected were done by jury. And so a lot of people liked films that we selected, and that's why we're showing them. So all you would have to do is click buy tickets, and that bounces you to our Eventive website. This is the welcome page. And on the welcome page, it gives you more basic information, where the live screenings are, how to get there, who the sponsors are and the staff. And then you would click ticket screenings to get to our catalog page. And on the catalog page, you can get overview of the programs by genre. And let's see if I can find all of the films and when they're showing. I think I have to do this because they're all taking place later on. So Meet Cute is playing on this day with a feature film called Stargazer. And Shon, I believe you said you were going to come. So it should
Yes.
be a real, we're expecting a lot of people at this show because it's made, Stargazer is made by a New Jersey crew. So that film is already selling briskly. And so you'll be playing with Stargazer on that date. And in order to learn more, you click on that and it bounces you to this page. And to get more information, you can see a still from Meet Cute with the two kind of Humpty Dumpties. I kind of call them Humpty Dumpties. I don't know if that's fair, but I love the interaction between the two, and it's a really sweet film. And then let's go back to the last page. You can go back to the festival site, and you would click on schedule if you wanted to get a linear version of the programs, and we'd have to work our way all the way down to get to see where Idan's film is playing, which is right here. It's playing online only on Sunday, June 11th. It's shorts program 3. There's 3 different shorts programs. And here's a still from Idan's movie with the old lady in the background and death, the Grim Reaper plotting out his next strategy. So that's another way to get information about the films. You can also work your way back to the top or click menu, and the menu will give you access to the film guide. And there you can also find the poster for Deadline, which is behind Idan on the wall. I noticed that. And you can also get information about Meet Cute directly right here. And I guess that basically does it. We go back to the welcome page. You know, click around and explore. You want to buy an all access pass, you press this one, and that's a good overview of our website and how to purchase tickets. So both of your movies are playing around the same time. Meet Cute is playing on Sunday, June 11th at 7 o'clock in person and online all day. And Deadline is playing on the same day, online all day. And the way that it works is if you start watching the movie, let's say on Sunday, June 11th at 10 p.m., you don't have 2 hours to finish watching it. The minute you start watching any program, you have 24 hours to complete it. So technically, Idan, since you're in Israel, the time difference is about 8 hours from the United States, from East Coast.
Yeah.
So that it would really seem like your program will start on Saturday if you're in Israel. So it's all the times are based on East Coast USA time. So that gives a nice overview. And I want to thank you both for joining us. And thank you, Vanessa, for asking some questions as well. I look forward to screening your work at our festival. And folks, you got to come and check out the movies in person. We had a number of people, they would watch the movies online, you know, during the morning or afternoon, and then come when there was an in-person show and come and interact with the filmmakers whenever that was possible. So thanks again for joining us. And this Q&A will be on YouTube very shortly. So thanks again.
Well, thank you so much.